Commander Zixthar stood in the center of Defense Station Theta-7, watching the holographic displays that floated around him. His three eyes scanned the data streams with practiced ease. Outside the massive windows, the void of space stretched endlessly, dotted with distant stars. This was the outer rim, the edge of the great galactic empire, and nothing ever happened here. That was exactly how Zixthar liked it. The station hummed quietly with the sound of advanced technology. Quantum sensors swept through space constantly, detecting anything that moved faster than light. Communication arrays listened to the quantum-entangled messages that crisscrossed the empire. Heat sensors picked up the warmth of engines from millions of kilometers away. In 10,000 years, the empire had perfected the art of seeing everything. Zixthar's scales shimmered blue-green under the station lights. He was Valorian, a species known for their calm nature and attention to detail, perfect qualities for someone watching the emptiness of space. His shift would end in 2 hours, and he looked forward to his rest period. "Commander," a voice broke through his thoughts. Zixthar turned to see junior technician Kelma, a young officer fresh from the academy. Her orange skin showed her nervousness in small color shifts. New technicians were always nervous, seeing threats in every sensor glitch. "Yes, technician?" Zixthar kept his voice patient. "Sir, I'm seeing something strange on the gravitational sensors." Kelma's fingers danced over her control panel, pulling up data. "There's a mass out there, but nothing else is detecting it." Zixthar walked over to her station. Probably a calibration error, he thought. "Show me." The display shifted, showing a three-dimensional map of local space. A red indicator pulsed approximately 40 million kilometers away. The gravitational sensors showed something large, perhaps the size of a small moon moving through space. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Zixthar ordered, his interest growing. "Heat, electromagnetic, quantum signature, everything." Kelma's fingers flew across the controls. After a moment, she looked up with confusion clear on her face. "Sir, all other sensors show nothing. Just empty space." "That's impossible." Zixthar leaned closer to the display. "Gravitational sensors don't lie. If there's mass there, everything else should detect it too." He pulled up his own command interface and ran the analysis himself. The results were identical. Something massive was out there, bending space with its gravity, but it was completely invisible to every other sensor they had. "Could it be a black hole?" Kelma asked. "Too small, and it's moving in a straight line." Zixthar felt a cold sensation run down his spine. In 30 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. "A rogue planet?" "Planets don't travel in perfectly straight lines at those speeds, sir." Zixthar expanded the scan range, pulling in data from other sensor arrays scattered throughout the sector. All showed the same thing. The object was real, it was big, and it was completely invisible except for its gravitational footprint. "Calculate its trajectory," he ordered. Kelma worked for several minutes while Zixthar watched the red indicator on the display. Finally, she looked up, her orange skin now pale with fear. "Sir, it's decelerating." The words hit Zixthar like a physical blow. "Confirm that." "Already confirmed twice, Commander. Whatever this is, it was moving faster 2 hours ago than it is now. It's slowing down." Kelma pulled up a projection. "If it continues this deceleration pattern, it will come to a complete stop in approximately 72 hours. Zixthar's mind raced. Natural objects didn't decelerate in space. Asteroids, comets, rogue planets, they all continued at constant speeds unless something acted on them. This thing was under intelligent control. "Sound the alert," Zixthar said quietly. "Category 1 unknown contact. Transmit all data to Fleet Command immediately." The station's atmosphere changed instantly. The quiet hum became urgent activity as officers rushed to their stations. Red lights flashed at every corner. Throughout the Empire's defense network, similar alerts began sounding. A Category 1 alert hadn't been issued in over 200 years. Within minutes, Fleet Command responded. Admiral Cortax's face appeared on the main display. The Admiral was Kranthian, a warrior species with 4 arms and armored skin that looked like polished stone. His reputation for aggressive tactics was known throughout the fleet. "Commander Zixthar, report." The Admiral's voice was sharp and direct. Zixthar transmitted the sensor data while he spoke. "Admiral, we have detected an object of significant mass approaching our sector. It's decelerating under intelligent control, But we cannot detect it through conventional means. No heat signature, no electromagnetic emissions, no quantum entanglement, nothing. Only gravity sensors are picking it up. Admiral Cortax studied the data, his expression growing darker.
How is this possible?
Our sensors can detect a single ship's drive signature from 50 light-years away. We don't know, sir. Whatever this is, it's using technology we've never encountered. Or very old technology, another voice said. A new figure appeared on the display, Dr. Mirala, the fleet's senior xenopsychologist. She was Etherian, her translucent body glowing softly. Admiral, permission to offer an analysis? Granted, Doctor. What if this vessel isn't using any modern technology? The Empire has relied on hyperspace, quantum communication, and fusion power for 10,000 years. Every species we know uses these same basic technologies. But what if someone deliberately chose not to? Admiral Cortax's eyes narrowed. Why would anyone choose primitive technology? To be invisible, Dr. Mirala said simply. Our sensors are designed to detect modern ships. We look for hyperspace wakes, quantum signals, fusion heat, electromagnetic emissions. What if this ship uses none of those things? Zixthar felt his blood run cold. Chemical propulsion, he whispered. Exactly, Dr. Mirala confirmed. Chemical rockets, analog computers, passive systems. Technology that hasn't been used since the early space age of most civilizations. Such a ship would be nearly invisible to our sensors. But that's insane, Admiral Cortax growled. Crossing interstellar space with chemical propulsion would take centuries. Millennia even. What species would do that? A very patient one, Dr. Mirala said. Or a very desperate one. Commander Zixthar, can you get visual confirmation? Zixthar nodded to Kelma, who adjusted the long-range optical telescopes. These ancient devices were rarely used anymore. Why look with light when sensors could see so much more? But now, they might be the only way to see what was coming. The display shifted to show a telescopic view. At first there was only darkness and stars. Then Kelma enhanced the image, filtering out background light, increasing contrast, focusing on the exact coordinates where the gravitational anomaly indicated the object should be. A shape appeared. It was difficult to see at first, just a slightly darker patch against the black of space. But as Kelma refined the image, more details emerged. The shape was long and cylindrical, with irregular structures along its length. It looked nothing like the sleek, energy-shielded vessels of the Empire. This ship was angular, almost crude in its construction. Magnify, Admiral Cortax commanded. The image zoomed in. The ship's hull was completely black, not with paint but with some kind of coating that absorbed all light. Solar panels, ancient solar panels, extended from its sides like wings. At its rear, Zixthar could see what looked like massive chemical thruster arrays. How big is it? The Admiral asked. Zixthar ran the calculations. Approximately 800 meters long, sir. Mass estimates suggest it's mostly fuel and cargo. Very little of it is actually living space. A generation ship, Dr. Mirala breathed. They crossed the void in a generation ship. From where? Admiral Cortax demanded. Where did this thing come from? Zixthar traced the trajectory backward, calculating where the ship must have originated. His computer worked for several minutes, following the path back through space, accounting for stellar drift and gravitational influences. When the answer appeared, he felt his 3 hearts skip a beat. Sir, trajectory indicates origin from Sector 001, Subregion 4477. That's... He checked the database. That's the dead zone. Silence filled the communications channel. The dead zone was a quarantined region of space near the Empire's core. It had been marked off-limits for thousands of years. The reason why had been lost to bureaucracy and time, but the quarantine remained. No one went there. No one even thought about it anymore. Pull up any records we have on that region, Admiral Cortax ordered. Zixthar searched the archives. Most files from that era were corrupted or incomplete. The Empire had changed formats and systems dozens of times over 10,000 years, and much data had been lost in transitions. But he found fragments. Sir, I have partial records from the old Empire expansion era. Survey reports from approximately 9,800 years ago. He pulled up what he could recover. The sector contains a yellow star, designated Sol. Third planet shows signs of primitive life. Recommendation: no contact, no strategic value, maintain surveillance distance. That's it? Admiral Cortax growled. There's more, but the files are heavily corrupted. Zixthar tried to recover more data. Wait, there's a warning notation. It's repeated several times in different files. He read the recovered text aloud. Do not provoke the silent species. Observation only. Quarantine recommended. The silent species, Dr. Mirala repeated. They knew. The old empire knew something about this planet's inhabitants. And they chose to hide the information, Admiral Kortak said darkly. How very convenient. Zixthar continued studying the approaching ship. It was still decelerating, still coming steadily closer. Sir, what are your orders? Admiral Kortak was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally, he spoke. I'm deploying the 7th Battle Fleet to your location. 500 warships should be sufficient. Commander, continue monitoring and send updates every hour. Do not, under any circumstances, initiate contact or hostile action. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, sir. Dr. Mirala, I want everything you can find about this silent species and why the old empire quarantined them. Dig through every archive, no matter how old. Yes, Admiral. The communications ended. Zixthar turned back to the display, watching the dark ship continue its approach. Around him, the station buzzed with activity, as officers prepared for whatever was coming. Sir? Kelma said quietly. Why do you think they call them the silent species? Zixthar studied the ship, its black hull absorbing all light, its chemical engines leaving almost no trace, its complete absence from every sensor except gravity. Because, he said slowly, they learned how to cross the stars without making a sound. Over the next 3 days, the ship continued its steady approach. The 7th Battle Fleet arrived, 500 warships forming a perimeter around Station Theta 7. More data came in from Dr. Mirala's research team, fragments of warnings, partial reports, corrupted files that all said the same thing. Stay away from the yellow star system. Leave the inhabitants alone, do not engage. But no one had explained why. The ship came closer. Now it was near enough that even basic telescopes could see it. The entire empire watched. News of the phantom contact spread across thousands of worlds. Some called for immediate destruction of the intruder. Others demanded answers. The council debated endlessly. And still the ship came closer, silent and dark. On the 3rd day, as the ship began its final deceleration burn, something changed. The communication arrays, those ancient radio receivers that hadn't been used in thousands of years, suddenly activated. Commander, Kelma shouted. We're receiving a transmission. Radio frequency, amplitude modulation. It's archaic, but the computer is translating. Put it through, Zixthar ordered. Static filled the command center, a sound that none of them had ever heard before. Then through the static, words came, spoken in a language that the computer identified as Ancient Imperial Standard, a tongue not used in 10,000 years. This is the Terran Diplomatic Corps vessel Perseverance. We have traveled far to reach you. We come in peace. We request permission to open formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Empire. Terran. The word meant nothing to Zixthar. He looked at the dark ship on his display, at the 500 warships surrounding it, at the data showing a vessel that had crossed the void in complete silence. We've come to talk, the voice continued through the static. Will you listen? The High Council chamber sat at the heart of the Empire's capital world, Centrum Prime. It was a massive room carved from a single crystal that had taken 1,000 years to grow. Light from the planet's 3 suns filtered through the crystal, casting rainbow patterns across the floor where representatives from 200 species gathered in emergency session. Councillor Vexnor called the meeting to order. The elderly statesman was Zentari, his gray skin marked with age lines that showed his 500 years of service. He looked tired. The phantom contact had given no one much sleep in the past 3 days. Members of the council, Vexnor began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. We face an unprecedented situation. A vessel of unknown origin has entered Imperial space using technology we can barely detect. It claims to be from something calling itself the Terran Diplomatic Corps. We must decide how to respond. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing the dark ship that now floated just outside Station Theta 7. The Perseverance looked small and fragile compared to the 500 warships surrounding it, but appearances could be deceiving. Admiral Kortak stood to speak. The Kranthian warrior's presence commanded attention. Honorable Council members, this vessel represents a significant security threat. We cannot detect it with our standard sensors. It appeared in our space without warning. If this is a scout ship, others could be anywhere in the Empire right now and we would never know. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Do we know anything about these Terrans? Counselor Eshtar asked. The insectoid representative clicked her mandibles nervously. Dr. Mirala stepped forward. The Etherian scientist's translucent form glowed brighter as she spoke, a sign of her excitement. I have spent the past 3 days searching our oldest archives. What I found is both fascinating and disturbing. She activated her own display, showing corrupted files and partial records. Approximately 9,800 years ago, during the Old Empire's expansion phase, our survey fleets discovered a planet orbiting a yellow star. The planet was designated Sol 3, though its inhabitants called it Earth. At that time, the dominant species had just entered their industrial age. They had primitive machines, basic understanding of chemistry and physics, but no space travel. Primitive, Admiral Kortak said dismissively. Then how do they have a starship now? That's where it gets interesting, Dr. Mirella continued. The survey report recommended no contact. The species was deemed non-strategic, no value to Empire, but someone added a warning to the file. She pulled up text fragments. These warnings appear in dozens of files over the next 100 years. They all say similar things: maintain distance. Do not provoke. Species shows dangerous adaptability. Recommend permanent quarantine. Adaptability? Counselor Eshtar asked. What does that mean? I don't know. Most of the detailed files are corrupted or deliberately erased, but someone in the Old Empire was very concerned about this species. Dr. Mirala paused. Concerned enough to hide them from history? Counselor Vexnor leaned forward. Are you suggesting a conspiracy? I'm suggesting that the Old Empire found something on Earth that worried them enough to quarantine an entire region of space, and then bury all records of why. Dr. Mirala's glow intensified. And now, 10,000 years later, those same beings have built a ship and come to find us. In 10,000 years, they should have developed hyperspace technology, another counselor said. They should have quantum communications, fusion drives, all the technologies we use. Instead, they arrive in a primitive generation ship. Why? Perhaps they're testing us, Admiral Kortak suggested. Send one old ship to see how we react before revealing their true capabilities. Or perhaps this is their true capability, Dr. Mirala countered. Perhaps they deliberately chose a different path of development. That's absurd, the Admiral growled. No species would choose to crawl between stars when they could leap. Unless, Dr. Mirala said quietly, they had a very good reason to remain undetected. That statement silenced the chamber. Every counselor understood the implication. If the Terrans had spent 10,000 years developing technology specifically designed to be invisible to Imperial sensors, it meant they had been planning for this moment for a very long time. We need more information, Counselor Vexnor decided. Admiral, have they responded to any of our hailing attempts? No, Counselor. They broadcast their initial message on ancient radio frequencies and then went silent. They're just waiting. For what? For us to make the first move, I think. Counselor Vexnor considered this. Very well. Prepare a delegation. We will meet with these Terrans and learn what they want. But Admiral, keep your fleet on full alert. At the first sign of treachery, they will be destroyed, Admiral Kortak finished. You have my word. The Council voted to proceed with diplomatic contact. A neutral meeting station was designated, halfway between the Perseverance and Station Theta 7. Both sides would send small delegations. No weapons, no warships closer than 1 million kilometers. It took another full day to arrange everything. During that time, analysts studied every pixel of the Terran ship. Engineers tried to understand how it worked. Xenopsychologists prepared profiles of possible behaviors. Military strategists planned for every contingency. Dr. Mirala was selected to lead the Imperial delegation, along with 3 military observers and 2 linguists. They traveled to the neutral station in a small diplomatic shuttle. Through the windows, Dr. Mirala could see the Perseverance floating in the darkness. Up close, the ship looked even more primitive. Its hull was scarred with micrometeorite impacts. Its solar panels were patched in dozens of places. This vessel had traveled a long way. They're launching a shuttle, one of the military observers reported. A small craft separated from the Perseverance. It used chemical thrusters, actual burning fuel to maneuver. Dr. Mirala watched it approach with a mixture of scientific curiosity and growing unease. These beings had crossed the void between stars using technology that the Empire had abandoned thousands of years ago. What kind of determination did that require? The Terran shuttle docked with the neutral station. Dr. Mirala and her team waited in the meeting chamber, a simple room with a table and chairs designed to accommodate various body types. Security scanners showed no weapons, no harmful substances, nothing dangerous. The door opened. 3 figures entered, walking on 2 legs. They wore mechanical suits, actual pressure suits that cycled air and maintained temperature through physical systems. Through the clear faceplates, Dr. Mirala could see their faces. They looked fragile. Soft skin, no scales or armor. 2 eyes instead of 3 or 4. Small frames that seemed delicate compared to most Imperial species, but their eyes were alert and intelligent, missing nothing. The lead Terran removed her helmet. She had dark skin and hair woven into complex patterns. When she spoke, her voice was clear and confident. "I am Ambassador Sarah Chen of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Dr. Mirala activated her translation device. "I am Dr. Mir Allah, representing the Galactic Empire. Forgive my directness, Ambassador, but we have many questions." "I imagine you do," Sarah said with a slight smile, "and I'm prepared to answer them. But first, may I ask, do you know about your Empire's history with Earth?" "Very little," Dr. Mirala admitted. "Our records from that era are largely corrupted." "Convenient," Sarah said, though her tone wasn't accusatory. "Then let me tell you a story." She gestured, and one of her companions activated a holographic projector. It was mechanical, not quantum-based, but it worked perfectly. Images appeared above the table. 10,000 years ago, your survey ships came to Earth. They watched us from orbit for several years. At that time, we had just invented flight, steam engines, telegraph communications. We were primitive by galactic standards. Sarah's images showed cities of that era full of coal smoke and horse-drawn carriages. "But we noticed you," she continued. "Some of our astronomers saw your ships in their telescopes. They saw things moving in orbit that shouldn't be there. Most people dismissed these observations, but some believed. And more importantly, some understood what it meant. The images changed, showing what looked like historical documents. We realized we weren't alone. We realized there was a vast civilization out there, far more advanced than us. And we had to make a choice." Dr. Mirala leaned forward. "What choice? Do we rush to join galactic civilization, or do we take our time and watch first?" Sarah's expression grew serious. "We studied your empire through every means we had. We listened to your radio transmissions. Yes, you used radio once 10,000 years ago, and those signals are still traveling through space. We watched your ships come and go. We learned about your politics, your wars, your conquests. And you were afraid," one of the Imperial military observers said. "Terrified," Sarah agreed without shame. "We saw what happened to species who developed quickly and announced themselves to the galaxy. They were absorbed into the Empire. Their worlds became colonies. Their cultures were homogenized. Some species resisted and were destroyed. Others accepted and lost their identity. That's not..." Dr. Mirala started to protest, but Sarah held up a hand. "I'm not saying the Empire is evil, but we saw that it was very, very large and very, very old and very set in its ways. We were tiny and weak. We would have no power, no voice. We would be just another client species serving the Empire's needs." "So you hid," Dr. Mirala said, understanding dawning. "We chose a different path," Sarah corrected. "We decided to develop our technology in a way that your sensors wouldn't detect. Chemical propulsion instead of fusion. Analog computers instead of quantum processors. Mechanical systems instead of energy fields. Radio silence instead of quantum broadcasting." "You crippled yourselves," the military observer scoffed. "We chose patience over speed," Sarah replied calmly. "While you were looking for hyperspace signatures and quantum entanglement, we were building generation ships. While you were scanning for fusion reactors, we were using solar panels and chemical batteries. While you were listening for quantum communications, we were traveling in complete radio silence." Dr. Mirala's mind raced with implications. "How many ships did you build?" Sarah's smile returned, but it wasn't comforting. "The Perseverance was the first. It launched 9,600 years ago, just 200 years after your survey ships left. It carried 20,000 people in suspended animation." 20,000? Dr. Mirala gasped. On that small ship? We packed them very efficiently, Sarah said. The journey took 847 years. When we arrived at our destination, a planet your empire had surveyed and dismissed as unsuitable for habitation, we woke up and started building. One colony, the military observer said dismissively. That's hardly a threat. One colony, Sarah agreed. And from that colony we built more ships, and those ships established more colonies, and those colonies built more ships, for 9,000 years. While your empire was busy with its politics and wars and quantum communications, we were spreading through your space like seeds on the wind. Silent, invisible, patient. The room fell into shocked silence. Dr. Mirala felt her glow dimming with horror. How many colonies? Sarah looked directly at her. At last count, 847 worlds. Some are small outposts with a few thousand people. Others are full colonies with populations in the millions. All of them hidden in places you never bothered to look. That's impossible, the military observer said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Sarah pulled up more images. High-gravity worlds that crush most species but we can endure with some adaptation. Planets with toxic atmospheres that we can filter. Irradiated zones from ancient supernovas where your people won't go, but we've learned to manage. Cold worlds, hot worlds, desert worlds, ocean worlds. We learned to thrive in all the places you found worthless. Dr. Mirala thought about the Empire's expansion. They had surveyed millions of worlds over 10,000 years. Most were dismissed as unsuitable. Too harsh, too dangerous, too expensive to colonize, and humanity had quietly claimed those worlds while the Empire's attention was elsewhere. Why reveal yourselves now? Dr. Mirala asked. Why not continue hiding? Sarah's expression softened. Because hiding forever isn't living. We've been patient. We've been careful. We've built a civilization across hundreds of worlds. But we're tired of hiding. Our children deserve to live openly. We deserve to be recognized as equals, not primitives to be conquered or ignored. And if we refuse? The military observer challenged. Then we continue as we have, Sarah said simply. But I think you'll find that's not a comfortable option for you. Because now you know we're here. Now you'll always wonder, are there humans on this world? That station, that ship? We've been integrated into your society for thousands of years, doing the jobs no one else wants to do, living in conditions no one else will tolerate. Can you find us all? Can you remove us without destroying the infrastructure we maintain? It was a checkmate delivered with a soft voice and a diplomatic smile. The Empire couldn't unknow what it had just learned. And as Dr. Mirala looked at the fragile-seeming woman across the table, she realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their stealth or their technology. It was their patience. The neutral station felt very small with the weight of Sarah Chen's revelations hanging in the air. Dr. Mirala sat across from the human ambassador, trying to process what she had just heard. 847 hidden colonies, thousands of years of secret expansion, an entire civilization built in the Empire's blind spots. I need to report this to the Council, Dr. Mirala said finally. They need to hear everything you've told me. Of course, Sarah agreed. In fact, I was hoping you would arrange a formal presentation. We have a great deal more to share. The military observer leaned forward aggressively. You speak very confidently for someone whose ship is surrounded by 500 warships. Sarah met his gaze without flinching. Those warships can destroy the Perseverance easily. We know that. We've always known the Empire has superior firepower. But destroying one ship doesn't change what I've just told you. We're still on hundreds of worlds. You still can't detect us. And we've had 10,000 years to prepare for the possibility that contact might go badly. Are you threatening us? The observer demanded. I'm stating facts, Sarah replied calmly. We don't want war. War would be terrible for everyone. But we won't be destroyed or enslaved either. We've worked too hard for too long to give up now. Dr. Mirala raised a glowing hand to stop the argument. Ambassador Chen, what exactly does your government want from the Empire? Recognition, territory rights, a seat on the Council, the same things every sovereign species in the Empire has. The Empire doesn't negotiate with primitives, the military observer said. Sarah's smile was thin. Then I suppose you'll need to update your definition of primitive. We crossed interstellar space using determination and patience. We established hundreds of colonies without your knowledge. We learned to survive in environments most of your species can't tolerate. Does that sound primitive to you? Before the argument could escalate, Dr. Mirala stood. This meeting is over for now. Ambassador Chen, you and your delegation will be provided quarters on the station while I return to Centrum Prime and brief the council. Can you remain here for approximately 3 standard days? We've waited 10,000 years, Sarah said. 3 more days won't hurt. The trip back to Centrum Prime took 2 days via hyperspace. During that time, Dr. Mirala compiled her report and prepared her presentation. She also sent analysts to begin searching Imperial space for signs of human presence. If Sarah was telling the truth, there had to be evidence somewhere. The reports started coming in within hours. A mining station on a high-gravity world near the core systems reported that 60% of their workforce were Terrans, beings they had assumed were just another client species. These humans lived and worked in gravity that would crush most Imperial citizens. They had been there for 2,000 years. A toxic waste processing facility on a chemically poisoned planet employed hundreds of humans who worked without protective suits. They're adapted. Biology could handle the environment. Deep Space Station at the edge of an irradiated nebula was staffed almost entirely by humans who had been living there for generations. Station after station, world after world, the reports came in. Humans were everywhere, doing jobs that were too dangerous, too uncomfortable, or too unpleasant for other species. They lived in the margins of Imperial society, invisible because no one had bothered to look closely. When Dr. Mirala presented her findings to the council, the chamber erupted in chaos. This is an invasion. Councillor Eshitar clicked her mandibles furiously. They've infiltrated our entire civilization. They work for us, another councillor pointed out. They maintain critical infrastructure. If they wanted to sabotage us, they've had thousands of years to do it. Maybe they're waiting, Admiral Kordax growled, building up numbers until they're ready to strike. Or maybe, Dr. Mirala said loudly, silencing the arguments, they're exactly what they claim to be. A patient species who wanted to survive and thrive without being conquered. They didn't attack us. They didn't threaten us. They came openly with a diplomatic mission. After hiding for 10,000 years, Councillor Eshitar protested. Yes, Dr. Mirala agreed. And can anyone here honestly say that if they had announced themselves 10,000 years ago, we would have treated them as equals? We would have seen primitive beings on a single planet and either ignored them or absorbed them. They chose a third option. Councillor Vexnor called for order. Dr. Mirala, what is your professional assessment of the situation? Dr. Mirala gathered her thoughts. Ambassador Chen is telling the truth. Humans are present on hundreds of worlds throughout the Empire. They've been integrated into our society at the lowest levels for millennia. They do essential work that keeps our civilization functioning. Removing them would cause catastrophic infrastructure failures. Fighting them would be asymmetric warfare on a scale we've never faced. They know everything about us. We know almost nothing about them. So we're helpless? Admiral Kordax demanded. We're facing a situation that can't be solved with force, Dr. Mirala corrected. The question isn't whether we can destroy them. We probably can't, not completely. The question is whether we want to try. And I believe the answer should be no. You want us to surrender to primitives? Another counselor asked incredulously. I want us to recognize reality. Humanity isn't primitive. They're different. They chose a path we didn't expect because we assumed everyone would develop the same way we did. They proved us wrong. And now we have to decide if we're wise enough to accept that. The debate continued for hours. Some counselors demanded immediate military action. Others argued for negotiation. Still others wanted to study the situation more before deciding anything. In the end, Councillor Vexnor called for a vote. Should the council hear humanity's formal proposal? The vote was close, but it passed. 3 days later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the full council in the Crystal Chamber on Centrum Prime. She wore formal diplomatic clothing rather than a pressure suit. Behind her stood 2 more humans, both looking calm despite facing representatives from 200 species. Honorable council members, Sarah began, I want to start by apologizing. That caught everyone by surprise. Apologizing? Councillor Vexnor asked. Yes, we hid from you. We infiltrated your society without permission. We established colonies in your space without asking. From your perspective, we violated your territory and trust. For that, I apologize. Sarah paused. But I won't apologize for our survival. We did what we felt we had to do to preserve our species and our independence. What exactly do you want from us? Counselor Vexnor asked directly. First, recognition of Terra, Earth, as a sovereign homeworld. Second, territorial rights to the 847 colonies we've established. Third, a seat on this council with the same voting rights as any other member species. Fourth, the right to continue our trade and cultural exchange with other imperial species. That's everything you would get if you had conquered us, Admiral Kortak said bitterly. No, Sarah corrected. If we had conquered you, we would be standing here with a fleet, not with a diplomatic proposal. We're asking to join the Empire as equals, not to rule it. And if we refuse? Counselor Eshtar asked. Sarah's expression grew serious. Then we continue as we have been, hidden, separate, always watching, always waiting. Is that really what you want? To know there's an entire civilization in your space that you can't see and can't control? Or would you rather have us as open allies and partners? You're not giving us much choice, another counselor observed. I'm giving you the choice between uncertainty and cooperation, Sarah replied. Between fear and trust. You can spend the next 1,000 years trying to find all our colonies and remove us, knowing you'll probably miss some and create resentment in the ones you do find. Or you can accept that we're here, we're not leaving, and we're willing to be friends. Counselor Vexnor studied the human ambassador. Tell me something, Ambassador Chen. If the situation were reversed, if we had hidden in your space for 10,000 years, what would Earth do? Sarah considered the question carefully. Honestly? We'd probably be terrified. We'd probably want to fight or run, but I hope we'd be wise enough to talk first. She looked around the chamber. Every species here joined the Empire at some point. Some came peacefully. Some were conquered. Some negotiated. We're choosing negotiation. Doesn't that count for something? Dr. Mirala stood to speak. May I add something, council members? I've studied Ambassador Chen and her people. I've reviewed the reports from stations and colonies where humans work. In 10,000 years, they've never sabotaged our infrastructure, never attacked our citizens, never used their hidden positions to harm us. If they wanted to hurt the Empire, they've had countless opportunities. They didn't take them. That suggests their intentions are genuine. Or they were waiting for the right moment, Admiral Kortak countered. For 10,000 years. Dr. Mirala's glow intensified. Admiral, patience like that isn't strategic planning. It's cultural philosophy. These beings think in terms of centuries and millennia. They play the longest game imaginable, and they chose to reveal themselves now peacefully, with a diplomatic proposal. We should take that seriously. The council debated late into the night cycle. Sarah and her delegation were escorted to waiting chambers while votes were taken, and alliances were formed and arguments were made. The entire Empire watched on broadcast channels. This was the biggest decision in thousands of years. Meanwhile, in orbit above Centrum Prime, the Perseverance floated silently. The 500 warships that had escorted it from the outer rim maintained their positions. Inside the ancient generation ship, 20 crew members waited to hear if their 10,000-year journey would end in acceptance or war. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge, watching the Imperial capital through a simple window. He was fourth-generation shipborne, descended from the original crew who had left Earth almost 10,000 years ago. His entire life had been building toward this moment. Captain, his communications officer said, we're receiving a message from the planet. Audio only, radio frequency. Put it through. Dr. Mirala's voice came through the static. Perseverance, this is Dr. Mirala. The council has made their decision. They want to meet with you and your entire crew. Not as prisoners or specimens, but as representatives of your people. Can you bring your ship to the orbital station? Captain Rodriguez looked around his bridge, at the patched panels and worn controls, at the mechanical displays that had functioned for almost 10,000 years, at the crew who had maintained this ship through generations of travel. Doctor, he said into the radio, the Perseverance has traveled a long way. I think she can make it a little farther. Good, Dr. Mirala replied. Because I think the council is ready to listen. Really listen. As the Perseverance moved slowly toward the orbital station on its chemical thrusters, something shifted in Imperial space. It was subtle, like a change in the wind that you feel but can't see. The Empire had spent 10,000 years believing it knew everything about the galaxy. Now it was learning that sometimes the most important things are the ones you never noticed were there. And in the crystal chamber on Centrum Prime, Counselor Vexnor prepared the documents that would change everything. Documents that would add one more species to the council, One more homeworld to the maps. One more voice to the debates. He thought about Sarah Chen's words about patience and survival. About choosing the long path over the fast one. About watching and waiting while building something that would last. Maybe, he thought, the Empire could learn something from these quiet, patient beings who had crossed the void in silence. Maybe it was time to listen to the silent species. The news spread across the Empire like wildfire. Within hours of Ambassador Chen's presentation to the Council, every species knew about humanity. The hidden civilization. The 847 colonies. The 10,000 years of secret expansion. Reactions were mixed and intense. Some species were fascinated. Others were angry. Many were afraid. In the military command center deep beneath Centrum Prime, Admiral Kortak stood before a massive holographic display showing the entire Empire. His staff had been working non-stop for 5 days, trying to locate every human colony and settlement. Red dots appeared on the map one by one as reports came in. Status, the Admiral growled. Commander Rilex, his chief of intelligence, manipulated the display. Sir, we've confirmed 312 human colonies so far. We're finding more every hour. They're scattered across all sectors of the Empire. Show me their distribution pattern. The display changed. The red dots weren't randomly placed. They clustered around certain types of worlds. High-gravity planets, toxic atmospheres, radiation zones, extreme temperatures. Places where the Empire had stations and facilities but no significant populations. They took every world we didn't want. Admiral Kortak muttered. Every planet we deemed too harsh or too expensive to colonize properly. Yes, sir. And they're not just on isolated worlds. We're finding human workers on thousands of stations, facilities, and industrial complexes throughout Imperial space. They're integrated into our infrastructure at levels we never noticed. Admiral Kortak studied the display with growing frustration. He was a military commander. He understood force and tactics and strategic advantage. But how did you fight an enemy that was already everywhere? An enemy that maintained your power plants and processed your waste and worked in your mines? What about military action, he asked. Could we remove them by force? Commander Rilex hesitated. Theoretically, yes, practically. Sir, it would be a nightmare. Human colonies are often in locations that are difficult for our forces to operate in. High-gravity worlds where our troops would need special equipment. Toxic planets where exposure would be lethal. And that's before we consider the infrastructure problem. Explain. Sir, humans currently operate or maintain approximately 40% of our hazardous environment facilities. Waste processing, deep mining, radiation cleanup. If we remove them forcibly, those facilities shut down. We don't have enough personnel from other species willing or able to do those jobs. Find volunteers. Offer higher pay. We're trying, sir. But there's a reason those jobs went to humans in the first place. Most species can't or won't work in those conditions. Humans have adapted to environments we consider uninhabitable. They thrive where we struggle to survive. Admiral Kortak turned away from the display. So we're dependent on them. I wouldn't say dependent, sir, but removing them would cause significant disruptions. Before the Admiral could respond, alarms sounded throughout the command center. Sir, another officer called out. We have an incident at mining station Kappa 19. A patrol ship tried to intimidate the human workers there. The situation has escalated. Show me. The display shifted to show live footage from the mining station. It was located on a planet with 3 times standard gravity, orbiting dangerously close to a gas giant's radiation belt. The planet's surface was a hellscape of crushing gravity and hard radiation that would kill most species within hours. A patrol corvette hovered above the main human settlement. Through the broadcast channel, they could hear the patrol captain speaking. Attention human workers. This is Imperial Patrol Ship Defender. You are ordered to evacuate this colony immediately. You have 48 hours to... The transmission cut to static. The display flickered. What happened? Admiral Kortak demanded. Unknown, sir. All communication with the patrol ship has been lost. Weapons fire? No, sir, no energy signatures at all. The ship is still intact but non-responsive. Admiral Kortak felt a cold sensation in his chest. Get me visual. The display showed the patrol corvette still floating above the settlement, but something was wrong. Its position had shifted slightly. It was drifting. The ship's power is offline, Commander Rilex reported. Completely dead. No engines, no weapons, no life support, nothing. How is that possible? That's a military vessel with triple redundant power systems. I don't know, sir. Then a new transmission came through, a human voice calm and polite. Imperial Command, this is Colony Administrator Marcus Liu of Mining Station Kappa 19. Your patrol ship experienced a technical malfunction. We're sending a recovery team to tow it to a safe distance and restore power. The crew will not be harmed. Please send a retrieval vessel at your earliest convenience. Technical malfunction? Admiral Kordak snarled. What did they do to that ship? Sir, our technical analysis shows they hit it with an electromagnetic pulse, a very sophisticated one that bypassed all our shielding. The ship is intact, but every electronic system has been fried. I thought humans used primitive technology. Primitive, yes, but they've had 10,000 years to perfect it. An EMP weapon is ancient technology, simple physics, and because we've spent so long developing energy shields against modern weapons, we stopped thinking about defenses against primitive ones. Admiral Kordax stared at the disabled patrol ship, a 100-meter warship, rendered helpless by technology that was thousands of years old. The irony was bitter. Recall all patrol ships, he ordered. No one approaches human colonies without explicit authorization from this office. Is that clear? Yes, sir. But the incident at Kappa 19 was just the beginning. Reports started coming in from across the Empire. Not attacks exactly, but demonstrations. Shows of capability. On a toxic waste planet, human workers accidentally released containment on a storage tank. The toxic cloud forced the evacuation of the Imperial Overseer Station. The humans, with their adapted biology, kept working. The message was clear. You need us more than we need you. At a deep space research station, human maintenance workers went on strike. Not violently. They simply stopped working. Within 2 days, critical systems started failing. The station commander had no choice but to negotiate. On a high-gravity world, humans mining rare minerals slowed their production. Imperial authorities threatened punishment. The humans calmly pointed out that no other species could do the work. The threat stopped. Each incident was small. Each one was carefully controlled. No one was hurt. No property was seriously damaged. But the message spread throughout the Empire. Humanity was not helpless. They might not have energy weapons or force fields, but they had leverage. They controlled infrastructure that the Empire needed. They worked in places the Empire couldn't reach. They had spent 10,000 years learning how to survive in hostile environments. And they were very, very good at it. Back in the council chambers, the debates grew heated. Councillor Vexnor tried to maintain order as different factions argued their positions. We should grant their demands immediately, Dr. Mirala argued. Every day we delay, tensions increase. The humans have shown remarkable restraint, but that won't last forever. They're blackmailing us. Councillor Eshitar clicked her mandibles angrily. Using their positions in our infrastructure as leverage. That's not diplomacy. It's negotiation, another councillor countered. They have something we want. We have something they want. That's the basis of all agreements. Admiral Kortax had been called to brief the council on the military situation. He stood stiffly, his pride clearly wounded by the recent incidents. The military situation is complex, he admitted. Direct confrontation with human colonies would be difficult and costly. They occupy positions that are defensible by nature. High gravity, toxic atmospheres, radiation zones, places where our troops would be at a severe disadvantage. So we can't remove them by force? Councillor Vexnor asked. We could eventually, but the cost would be enormous, both in military resources and in damage to critical infrastructure. And the Admiral paused, clearly struggling with what he was about to say. They've proven more capable than we anticipated. They might not have modern weapons, but they understand warfare. They've studied us for 10,000 years. They know our weaknesses. While we know almost nothing about them, Dr. Mirala added. That's the fundamental imbalance here. They've been watching us for millennia. They know our psychology, our tactics, our political systems, our economy. We're just learning they exist. A new counselor stood to speak. She was Dorian, a philosopher species known for their long-term thinking. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. We keep calling humanity's development primitive. But is it? They crossed interstellar space through determination and patience. They adapted to environments we can't tolerate. They built a civilization across hundreds of worlds without anyone noticing. That's not primitive. That's sophisticated in ways we never considered. They use chemical rockets, Counselor Eshtar protested. So what? The Dorian replied. A chemical rocket that reaches its destination is more sophisticated than a hyperspace drive that draws attention and provokes conflict. They chose tools appropriate to their goals. Is that not wisdom? The debate continued, but slowly opinion was shifting. More and more counselors were coming to accept that humanity wasn't going away. The question wasn't whether to recognize them, but how to do it in a way that preserved the Empire's dignity. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen waited in her quarters on Centrum Prime. She had received reports about the incidents across the Empire. Some of her own people were getting impatient, taking actions without waiting for the diplomatic process. She understood their frustration. 10,000 years of hiding was enough, but she also knew that pushing too hard could destroy everything they'd worked for. A message came through on her communication device. It was from Admiral Kordax requesting a private meeting. Sarah considered refusing. The Admiral had made his hostility clear. But sometimes you had to talk to people who didn't like you. They met in a neutral conference room. Admiral Kordax sat across from her looking tired and angry. Ambassador Chen, he began, I want you to understand something. I don't trust you. I don't like you. And I don't believe your people's intentions are as peaceful as you claim. Okay, Sarah said simply. That seemed to throw him off. You're not going to defend yourself. You're entitled to your opinion. But Admiral, let me ask you something. If we wanted to hurt the Empire, why would we reveal ourselves? Why not stay hidden and continue sabotaging you from within? Maybe this is part of your strategy. For 10,000 years? Admiral, we've maintained your infrastructure. We've kept your dangerous facilities running. We've done the jobs no one else would do. If we were your enemy, that was a very strange way to show it. You infiltrated our space without permission. You're right. We did. Because the alternative was announcing ourselves when we were weak and being conquered or destroyed. We chose survival over legality. I'm not going to apologize for that. Sarah leaned forward. But Admiral, we're here now, talking, negotiating. Doesn't that count for something? Admiral Kordax was quiet for a long moment. Do you know why I became a military commander? He finally asked. No, because I believe in order, in rules. In knowing who your allies are and who your enemies are. Your people have disrupted all of that. You're everywhere and nowhere. You're weak but have leverage. You follow our rules when convenient but ignore them when not. You make everything complicated. Yes, Sarah agreed. We do. Because real life is complicated. The universe doesn't fit into neat categories of friend and enemy, strong and weak, advanced and primitive. We're proof of that. I don't like it. I know. But you're smart enough to see reality. You can't fight us without destroying infrastructure you need. You can't remove us without massive disruption. And we're not actually threatening you. We just want to exist openly. Sarah paused. What does your military wisdom tell you to do when you can't win by fighting? Negotiate, the Admiral admitted reluctantly. Find another solution. Exactly. Admiral Kordax stood to leave. At the door he paused. Ambassador Chen, if the Council grants your demands and you join the Empire as equals, I will hold you to the same standards as everyone else. No special treatment. No excuses about being new. Can humanity handle that? Sarah smiled. Admiral, we crossed the void in silence for 10,000 years. I think we can handle some bureaucracy. After he left, Sarah sat alone thinking about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. From that first glimpse of alien ships in Earth's sky to the construction of the Perseverance, to the slow spread across hundreds of worlds. 10,000 years of patience. 10,000 years of hiding. 10,000 years of building and waiting and preparing for the day when they could stand openly. That day was almost here. Her communication device chimed. It was a message from Counselor Vexnor. The Council will vote tomorrow on humanity's petition. Win or lose, the waiting ends. Be prepared. Sarah sent a message back to the Perseverance to Captain Rodriguez and his crew. She sent messages to colony administrators on 847 worlds. The same message to everyone. Tomorrow we learn if 10,000 years of patience was enough. Either way, we did what we set out to do. We survived. We thrived, and we did it our way. Be proud. The crystal chamber was packed with representatives from every major species in the Empire. News drones floated throughout the space, broadcasting to billions of viewers across thousands of worlds. This vote would change the Empire forever, one way or another. Counselor Vexnor stood at the central podium, his 500 years of diplomatic experience showing in his calm demeanor. But even he felt the weight of this moment. The Empire had endured for 10,000 years by following certain rules. Today they would decide whether to bend those rules or break them. Honored members of the Council, Vexnor began, we have debated for 7 days. We have heard testimony from military leaders, scientists, economists, and philosophers. We have reviewed thousands of reports about humanity's presence in our space. Now we must decide. Do we recognize Terra as a sovereign world and grant humanity a seat on this council? Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the visitors' gallery with Captain Rodriguez and a small delegation from the Perseverance. She looked calm, but her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. 10,000 years had led to this moment. Before we vote, Vexnor continued, I have asked Dr. Miralla to present a final analysis of the situation. Dr. Miralla's translucent form glowed as she moved to the podium. Thank you, Counselor. I will be brief. Over the past week, I have studied humanity extensively. I have visited their colonies, spoken with their workers, reviewed their history. What I found surprised me. She activated a holographic display showing human colonies across the Empire. These beings have done something remarkable. They took all the places we considered worthless, high-gravity worlds, toxic atmospheres, radiation zones, and turned them into homes. They adapted where we expected species to conquer. They survived where we thought survival was impossible. The display changed to show human workers maintaining various facilities. More importantly, they have been part of our civilization for thousands of years without us noticing. They process our waste. They mine in our harshest environments. They maintain facilities in places too dangerous for most species. They have been quietly essential to our empire's function. Counselor Eshtar stood to speak. Doctor, that's precisely the problem. They infiltrated our society without permission. They hid from us. How can we trust them? How can we not? Dr. Miralla replied. Counselor, they had 10,000 years to sabotage us. 10,000 years to strike from within. They didn't. Instead, they worked. They contributed. They integrated themselves into our civilization peacefully. She paused. I believe their actions speak louder than our fears. Admiral Cortex stood next. The warrior's presence still commanded attention, but his tone was different from before. Less aggressive. More thoughtful. I will not pretend to like this situation, he said bluntly. From a military perspective, humanity has done everything wrong. They violated our borders. They established colonies without authorization. They operated in secrecy for millennia. He paused. But they also demonstrated something that matters more than any of that. They demonstrated restraint, self-discipline, strategic patience that exceeds any species I know. He pulled up data on the recent incidents. When my forces attempted to intimidate their colonies, humans could have responded with violence. They chose not to. They demonstrated capability without causing casualties. They made their point without making enemies. That shows a level of tactical wisdom that I respect. Even if I don't like how we got here. The Admiral looked directly at Sarah Chen. If humanity joins this council, they will be held to the same standards as everyone else. No excuses. No special treatment. Can you accept that? Sarah stood. Admiral, we don't want special treatment. We want equal treatment. That's all we've ever wanted. Admiral Cortex nodded slowly. Then I believe we should grant it. The military cost of removing humanity is too high. The practical cost of losing their labor is too high. And the moral cost of punishing them for surviving is too high. My recommendation is to accept their petition. A murmur ran through the chamber. Admiral Cortex had been one of humanity's strongest opponents. His change of position carried weight. Other counselors spoke. Some argued for acceptance. Others still demanded refusal. The debate stretched for hours. But slowly a consensus began to emerge, not because everyone agreed with humanity's methods, but because everyone agreed on the reality. Humanity was here, they were established, and fighting them would cost more than accepting them. Finally, Counselor Vexnor called for the vote, all in favor of recognizing Terra as a sovereign world within the Galactic Empire. Green lights appeared throughout the chamber as counselors voted. Sarah watched them accumulate, her heart pounding. All opposed? Red lights appeared, but fewer than the green. Abstentions? A handful of yellow lights joined the display. Counselor Vexnor studied the results. The measure passes. By a vote of 107 to 62 with 11 abstentions, The Council recognizes Terra as a sovereign world. Humanity is granted territorial rights to their established colonies and a seat on this council. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species cheered, others protested. News drones swarmed to capture reactions. But through it all, Sarah Chen remained seated, tears streaming down her face. Captain Rodriguez gripped her shoulder, his own eyes wet. 10,000 years. 10,000 years of patience. 10,000 years of hiding. 10,000 years of hope. And it had finally paid off. Counselor Vexnor raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Chen, please approach the podium. Sarah walked to the center of the chamber on shaking legs. Vexnor placed a ceremonial medallion around her neck, the symbol of council membership. Ambassador Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Empire, I welcome humanity as equals and partners. May your patience serve as an example to us all. Sarah took a deep breath. Thank you, Counselor. On behalf of humanity, I accept this recognition. We promise to be worthy of your trust. She turned to address the full chamber. We didn't want war. We didn't want conquest. We wanted to survive and thrive on our own terms. You taught us that being visible in this galaxy meant being vulnerable. So we learned to be invisible, but invisibility comes with its own costs. Our children grew up in hiding. Our people worked in harsh conditions without recognition. We adapted to toxic worlds rather than claim pleasant ones. We made ourselves small so that we could survive. She paused, looking at the representatives of 200 species. But we don't want to be small anymore. We want to stand openly, to be acknowledged, to contribute to this empire not from the shadows but from the light. We have much to learn from you. And perhaps you have something to learn from us. About patience, about adaptation, about surviving when the odds are against you. The chamber was silent. Then slowly one counselor began to clap. Then another. Then more. Not everyone joined in. Some still opposed humanity's acceptance, but enough did to fill the crystal chamber with sound. Sarah returned to her seat. As she sat down, her communication device buzzed with messages from across the empire. From colony administrators, from human workers on thousands of stations, from children who would now grow up in the open rather than in hiding, all saying the same thing: we did it. 3 months later, the empire began to change. Slowly at first, then faster. Human advisors joined various departments, bringing perspectives shaped by 10,000 years of watching from the outside. They helped redesign safety protocols for hazardous work. They shared techniques for surviving in extreme environments. They taught patience to species who had forgotten how to think long-term. Dr. Mirala established the Institute for Alternative Development Studies, examining how different species could advance technologically in different ways. The old assumption, that all species would follow the same path of fusion drives and quantum communications, was being challenged. Maybe there were many paths to the stars. Admiral Cortex, surprisingly, became one of humanity's strongest advocates. He established a joint training program where Imperial forces learned from human asymmetric tactics, while humans learned Imperial military doctrine. Know your enemy, he said, or in this case, know your ally. Same principle. On Earth, now officially recognized as Terra, celebrations lasted for weeks. The planet that had been surveyed and dismissed as worthless 10,000 years ago now held equal status with the Empire's core worlds. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Ambassador Chen maintained her position on the council, though she rotated with other human representatives. The rotation was important. Humanity wanted to demonstrate that no single person spoke for all of them. They were a democracy, and their council representatives should reflect that. 1 year after the vote, Sarah visited mining station Kappa 19, the high-gravity colony where the first confrontation had occurred. She stood on the surface in a simple pressure suit, feeling the crushing 3 times normal gravity pressing down on her. Around her, human workers went about their jobs, mining rare minerals from the harsh world. Colony Administrator Marcus Liu met her at the landing pad. Ambassador Chen, welcome to Kappa 19. I apologize for the conditions. Don't, Sarah said, looking around at the gray, barren landscape under the oppressive gravity. This is exactly what I wanted to see. This is what we do. This is who we are. The humans who thrive in hell. The humans who made hell into home, Sarah corrected. There's a difference. They walked, slowly, because walking was hard in this gravity, to the colony's main settlement. It was built into the ground, protected from radiation by meters of rock. Inside, Sarah found something surprising. Art on the walls. A small garden growing food under artificial lights. Children playing games. People living, not just surviving. The Empire offered to relocate us, Marcus said. Now that we're recognized, they said we could move to better worlds. More comfortable colonies, and we said no. This is our home. We built it. We adapted to it. Why would we leave? He smiled. Besides, someone has to mine these minerals. Might as well be us. We're good at it, Sarah understood. Humanity hadn't spent 10,000 years adapting to harsh worlds just to leave when things got easier. These colonies weren't punishments or sacrifices. They were achievements, proof that humans could live anywhere, thrive anywhere, if they were patient enough and determined enough. As she toured the colony, Sarah met workers who had been born here. Third and fourth generation colonists who knew no other home. They were stronger than baseline humans adapted to the high gravity. Their bones were denser, their muscles more powerful. They would struggle on normal gravity worlds. Do you resent growing up here? Sarah asked a young woman working in the mines. The woman looked surprised. Resent it? Ambassador, we're the toughest humans in the Empire. We work in conditions that would kill most species. Why would I resent that? That's something to be proud of. Sarah realized something important then. The Empire had always seen these harsh colonies as sacrifices. Terrible places where humans lived because they had no choice. But the humans themselves saw them differently. They saw challenges overcome, environments mastered, homes built where others said homes were impossible. That evening, Sarah recorded a message to be broadcast throughout human space. All 847 colonies, all the workers on thousands of stations, all the adapted humans living in all the harsh corners of the Empire. This is Ambassador Sarah Chen. 1 year ago, the Council recognized us, gave us what we asked for: legitimacy, territory, representation. We achieved what we set out to achieve 10,000 years ago. We survived. We thrived. We remained ourselves. She paused. But I want you to remember something. The vote in the Council didn't make us legitimate. You did. Every person who crossed the void in a generation ship, every colonist who adapted to a toxic world, every worker who maintained facilities in conditions others couldn't tolerate. You made us legitimate through your patience and determination. The Empire accepts us now, but whether they accepted us or not, we would still be here, still be strong, still be human. That's what 10,000 years of hiding taught us. We don't need anyone's permission to be who we are. We are humanity. We endure, we adapt, we thrive. And nothing, not ignorance, not rejection, not even an empire spanning thousands of worlds can change that. She ended the message and looked out the window at the harsh landscape of Kappa 19. This world would never be beautiful by conventional standards. The gravity was crushing, the radiation deadly, the landscape barren, but humans lived here, raised families here, built a civilization here. And that, Sarah thought, was more impressive than any hyperspace drive or quantum computer. Technology could be invented by anyone with enough intelligence and resources. But the will to thrive in impossible places, that was something special. 5 years after recognition, a new generation of imperial citizens grew up with a different understanding of humanity. Children learned in school about the species that crossed the void in silence, about the colonists who turned waste into resources, about the workers who thrived in environments considered uninhabitable. Humanity became known not for advanced technology, but for something more fundamental: adaptability and patience. If you had a problem that required long-term thinking, you hired a human advisor. If you needed work done in dangerous conditions, you contacted a human colony. If you wanted to understand how to survive when everything seemed impossible, you talked to humans. Some species still didn't trust them. Old suspicions died hard, but most came to accept humanity as a valuable part of the Empire. Different from other species, yes, but different in ways that made the Empire stronger. Dr. Mirala, now in her 6th decade of studying humanity, wrote a book titled The Silent Path: Alternative Development in a Quantum Universe. It became required reading in diplomatic academies. The key insight was simple but profound. There are many ways to reach the stars, and the way you choose reveals more about your values than your capabilities. Humanity chose patience over speed, invisibility over announcement, adaptation over conquest, and in doing so, they proved that survival wasn't about having the best technology or the strongest military. It was about understanding who you were and refusing to compromise that, no matter how long it took. On Earth, in the Museum of the Long Journey, a memorial stood in the place where the Perseverance had been built almost 10,000 years earlier. The memorial was simple, a stone pillar with names carved into it. Thousands of names, millions actually, spanning many pillars. The names of everyone who had lived and died during the long journey from discovered species to recognized civilization. At the base of the central pillar, an inscription read, "To those who traveled in silence, to those who adapted to hostile worlds, to those who waited when others rushed, to those who proved that patience is stronger than force and endurance outlasts conquest. You crossed the void without making a sound. You changed the galaxy without firing a shot. Your journey was 10,000 years, but it was worth every moment. May future generations remember, the longest path home is sometimes the only way to arrive with your soul intact." Ambassador Sarah Chen, now elderly but still sharp, stood before this memorial on the anniversary of recognition. Around her, thousands of humans gathered to remember the long journey. Children who had only known life in the Empire, workers from harsh colonies coming home to see where it all started, diplomats and administrators and colonists from 847 worlds. A young girl approached Sarah shyly. She was third-generation colony-born, her build suggesting she came from a high-gravity world. "Ambassador Chen?" the girl asked. "Is it true you were there when the council voted?" "When they said yes?" "I was there," Sarah confirmed. "Were you scared?" Sarah thought about that moment, standing in the crystal chamber, watching the votes accumulate. 10,000 years of history hanging in the balance. Terrified, she admitted. "But you did it anyway. We did it anyway. All of us, together." Sarah put a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Do you know what I learned in all those years of hiding, child? I learned that fear isn't the enemy. Giving up is. We were afraid for 10,000 years. But we never gave up, and that's what mattered." The girl smiled and ran back to her family. Sarah watched her go, thinking about the future. Humanity had a seat on the council now. They had territory, recognition, legitimacy. But those were just words. The real victory was simpler. They had survived as themselves. Not conquered, not absorbed, not changed into something else to fit someone else's idea of progress. They remained human, patient, adaptable, determined humans who could thrive anywhere and endure anything. Who chose the long path because it was the right path. Who crossed the void in silence because silence was safer than noise. And now, standing in the open light instead of hiding in shadows, they could finally show the galaxy what 10,000 years of patience had built. Not an empire, not a conquest, just a civilization of beings who refused to give up, refused to compromise who they were, and proved that sometimes the quietest voice in the room is the one most worth listening to. Sarah Chen looked up at the stars, the same stars that ancient humans had looked at when they first saw alien ships in their sky. The same stars that had guided generation ships across the void. The same stars that still called to humanity's children, promising new worlds and new challenges. The journey wasn't over. It would never be over. But now humanity could walk that journey openly, with their heads high and their patience intact. And that, Sarah thought, smiling at the distant stars, was worth waiting 10,000 years for.